Call 1-888-FARMERS to switch, and you could save an average of $470 on your auto insurance. That's a lot of money in just a few minutes. With savings like that, you could be lounging on an impractical amount of ornate and overpriced throw pillows you bought for your couch. But you won't, because you're better with money than that. That's why you're calling us in the first place. Call 1-888-FARMERS to get a quote today.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Based on average nationwide annual savings survey data July to December 2020. Underwritten by Farmers Trucker Fire Insurance Exchanges or affiliate. Products not available in every state.
From the east side and downtown to the west side and the valley, Los Angeles restaurants are open for contactless delivery or pickup with DoorDash. If you're looking for brunch, happy hour, or just an afternoon snack, DoorDash has your favorite local picks all in one app, so you can follow city guidelines without missing out on everything your neighborhood has to offer. Download the DoorDash app and get your local neighborhood delivered right to your door. DoorDash, every flavor welcome.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 304. Recently, we heard that Adam Perry Lang, Jeffrey Epstein's ex-personal chef, is fully cooperating with the FBI and their investigation into Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and their running of a child sex trafficking ring and a criminal enterprise. Now, there are many other ex-employees who should be doing the same thing, either of their own free will, or, if they won't do that, then they must be compelled to do so with subpoenas. There are plenty of other people who worked for and with Jeffrey Epstein that should be talking with the FBI as we speak. And guess what? Some of them might be, right? We don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. But as far as we know, Adam Perry Lang is the first of the high-profile members of Jeffrey Epstein's menagerie to come forward and work with the FBI. Now, if anyone would have intimate knowledge of what went on with Jeffrey Epstein and the players on the stage, you would think it would be the pilots who were transporting all of these people and these girls across state and international lines. You would think that these pilots, who have to fill out pilot logs and who have pretty strict FFA regulations that they have to follow, would know a thing or two about the people who were on their flights. The article we're going to discuss tonight is from 2019, and it's from SeattlePI.com. And if you remember, recently we read another article from this outlet, and that article was discussing Jeffrey Epstein's plane. So we're going to dive back in and see what they have to say about Epstein's pilots. This article was authored by Christine Negrani, published on September 7th of 2019. Headline: Should Epstein's pilots have foiled his child sex trafficking ring? Well, they should have most certainly done more than they did, right? We know Larry Visosky, not only did his daughter get married out at Zorro Ranch, he owns a 40-acre parcel of land at Zorro Ranch as well. So this isn't the kind of, treatment these pilots usually get from their clients, right? 40 acres at Zorro Ranch, exorbitant amounts of money, etc., etc. What else were they paying for besides service? Could it be that they were paying for their silence, like with others? As new reports emerge about the various ways the late convicted pedophile Jeff Epstein procured and pimped young women to some of the most influential men in the world, the public has heard little from the pilots who greeted the VIPs and the underage girls as they boarded Epstein's private jets. Larry Visosky and David Rogers flew for Epstein for nearly 2 decades. How could they be unaware of what the boss was up to? And now the author of this piece, Christine Negrani, is an aviation journalist. So she knows a thing or two, I would guess, about the procedures of these pilots and their guests coming on board, right? So the procedure is these pilots, especially when they're having VIPs on board, they greet the people coming onto their aircraft. So these pilots know exactly who was on their aircraft. They know that Jeffrey Epstein certainly didn't have any nieces or young girls that he should have been around. And yet here they were ferrying these girls across state lines, across international lines in some cases, to be trafficked and abused. Yet we have not heard anything about the pilots, really? Still, Visosky and Rogers, both of Florida, remain free to work as commercial pilots, with no enforcement actions taken against them from the years Epstein pled guilty to those activities. And you would think that these guys would have had some sort of repercussions for their working with Jeffrey Epstein for all of these years and not coming forward, right? I guess they could use the defense of, hey, we don't know. And it probably is almost impossible to prove that they knew that Epstein was abusing these girls, unless, of course, there's some sort of witness to them witnessing it on one of these planes, right? Because we know Epstein was abusing girls on these planes. Now it's just the point of, what do these pilots know? What have they kept under wraps for all of these years? And were they helping harbor criminal activity and keep it under wraps? And if so, then they must face penalties criminally and otherwise, professionally, I'm guessing. I'm sure the FAA has some rules against people being involved in sex trafficking in the skies above America. Virginia Roberts, seen in the photo below with England's Prince Andrew, says as a teenager, Epstein repeatedly ordered her to have sex with the prince. They are listed as having traveled together on Epstein's planes on multiple occasions. Not only do we have the flight logs that prove them on the plane together several times, there are also eyewitness reports. And if you try and tell me for 1 second that this pilot doesn't know who Prince Andrew is or didn't know that he was flying the Prince of England on his plane, I will call you a liar, because there's zero chance that occurred. This guy knew that Prince Andrew was on his plane, and he also knew who Virginia was, I'm guessing, considering she was on the plane so often as well. So there needs to be some serious conversations had with these pilots. Mr. Visosky, Mr. Rogers, it is time for you folks to answer some questions. Roberts told the Miami Herald the planes were called the Lolita Express because they were used to have sex with underage girls. If true, this would be a crime, and if the flights crossed state or national borders, as many of them apparently did, it would be a federal crime. Even so, according to the Federal Aviation Administration, it is not behavior that will cause a pilot to lose his or her license. Well, I guess the FAA doesn't have any rules or regulations about this kind of stuff, huh? What a crazy world we live in. The bureaucracy, the muck of the bureaucracy that makes up the rules of the playing field that we must abide by are so absolutely ridiculous that I don't even understand how we have a functioning society at this point. The only criminal activity that can result in the loss of a certificate is using an aircraft to transport illegal drugs and flying while intoxicated, said FFA Communications Manager Lynn Lunsford. There is a provision for good moral standing, although it is nebulous. Wow, that's crazy. So you mean to tell me that pilots, if they're transporting illegal drugs or flying while they've had a couple of sips of some bourbon or maybe a couple of hits off the bong, that's their licenses are pulled, and they probably should be, right? But if you're ferrying girls across state lines, no big deal, right? Ferrying them to be sex trafficked, all good. Your license is still in standing order, sir. But drugs? Nah, can't have that. We can't have people doing cocaine at the party. Neither Visosky nor Rogers have been subject to agency enforcement actions in the past, according to Lunsford. The agency policy is not to comment on whether an investigation is presently underway. Florida pilots Robert Gary Roxburgh, Peter Rathgeb, Bill Hammond, and Bill Murphy also worked for Epstein, although less frequently. So those other gentlemen, Robert Gary Roxburgh, Pete Rathgeb, Bill Hammond, and Bill Murphy were also pilots on Epstein's planes, and they must also be brought in, and they have to spill the beans, right? And if they don't want to do it on their own, again, subpoenas. No problem kicking in the doors of your political enemies, right? Or running an investigation into the investigators. So let's go and kick in the doors here of these sick-ass people who facilitated Jeffrey Epstein's crime and actually do some law enforcement duties that matter. You may be baffled that transporting illegal drugs is a more significant threat to one's pilot license than human trafficking, but more may be at play here. Yeah, I am baffled, there's no doubt. I think that the war on drugs is an absolute joke in the first place. So the fact that trafficking drugs, quote-unquote illegal, illicit drugs, is more of a penalty than trafficking human beings for modern-day bondage and slavery, yeah, I think that's kind of ridiculous, and baffle is a good word, I guess you would say. Of the 6 pilots who flew for Epstein, only Rogers appears to have kept detailed notes about his passengers. His handwritten logs are a mind-boggling list of names, including Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, Columbia's former president Andres Pastrana, New York hedge fund operator Glenn Dubin, and model agency owner Jean-Luc Brunel, to name just a few. The flights were both within the United States and international. Rogers describes trips that hopscotched across Europe, North Africa, and Asia. Now, the trips to North Africa and Asia, we haven't even gotten into those yet, really, right? And to be honest with you, there is a serious human trafficking problem in Northern Africa, especially right now in Libya. There's open-air slave markets in Libya as we speak. So I always wondered what Epstein was up to in North Africa, and don't even get me started on Asia. Why was Epstein and Bill Clinton and Kevin Spacey and the rest of those idiots in Thailand? We all know about what goes on in Thailand. We all know what creepy-ass people from the West go to Thailand for. And yet, here we are. These dudes were in Asia. No reports about it. No stories about it. None of these high-profile legacy media types digging into it. Rogers' logs corroborate some of the claims of Roberts, who said she was not only Epstein's sex slave, but was repeatedly ordered by him to perform sex acts on Harvard law professor Alan, I kept my underpants on, except at the Martha Vineyard's naked volleyball game tournament, Alan Dershowitz and Brunel, as well as Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew and Dershowitz have both challenged her story. Now remember, this is from 2019. Prince Andrew's challenges are looking pretty weak right now, aren't they? And Dershowitz, well, he's an unhinged maniac. He's like a caricature of himself at this point. And it's pathetic to watch. The guy is absolutely going over the edge, right? With his unhingedness at this point. Perhaps federal investigators are squeezing Rogers and Visosky, holding the good moral standing clause over their heads to encourage them to tell what they know or risk losing their tickets to fly. And that's quite possible, right? We don't know what is going on right now. We don't know if these pilots have been cooperating and if they were a part of Ghislaine Maxwell getting arrested per se. We don't know one way or the other, right? And we don't know who is cooperating and who isn't. But like I've said from the very beginning, you better believe that these sort of people, these pilots, the underlings, these people are worried about saving their own skin. They are going to roll over on each other. They're going to rat each other out, and they're going to do whatever they possibly can to keep themselves out of prison for the rest of their natural lives. If the government can make a compelling case that they knew the conduct was occurring and that they aided Epstein or helped hide it from the authorities, the FFA may make a case that their licenses should be suspended or revoked, said Justin A. Marchetta, a New Jersey lawyer representing aircraft owners, operators, and pilots with the New Jersey firm Inglesino, Webster, Wycloxka, and Taylor. So it does look like there is a mechanism for them to lose their licenses under the good standing clause. So ridiculous. As if just coming in and saying, hey, these guys were engaged in sex trafficking isn't good enough. So whatever that mechanism is, you would think that mechanism would have been clicked into place by now. So if it hasn't been, makes me wonder, are they cooperating with the feds? Have the feds been talking to these guys behind the scenes? Is this part of the ongoing grand jury investigation? I don't know. Quite possibly, though. Just last year, New Jersey private pilot Stephen Bradley Mell surrendered his license and 3 aircraft he owned after making a plea deal with federal prosecutors on charges he used his airplane to cross state lines with a minor for purposes of engaging in sex with a 15-year-old. Mel met the teen when her mother brought her to Mel for flying lessons. Sounds like a swell guy here, huh? Swell Mel meets a young girl to teach her how to fly, and then, well, what do you know? Abuses her, has sex with her. You know, the typical story of these sick old-ass perverts. On one occasion, according to the indictment, the 51-year-old married father of 3 put his plane on autopilot to have sex with his victim on a flight from Massachusetts to New Jersey. Well, what a tremendous guy Swell Mel is. I hope he rots in prison for his whole entire life. The case of the pilots of Epstein's planes, it is more nuanced, Marchetta told me. Visosky and Rogers may or may not have known this was going on or that the girls were underage. That's going to be the rub, right? That's where the prosecution's going to have to get creative, and they're going to have to bring a good, strong case. And I think that's what we're seeing going on right now behind the scenes. They're building a pretty strong case, a case with many different heads like a hydra, and I would not be shocked if Visovsky and Rogers were already cooperating. Now, do I have anything to back that up? No, I do not. That's just my opinion of the situation, but I can guarantee that there is more going on behind the scenes than you can possibly imagine. Perhaps, but Rogers saw a lot. From 1995, now remember, 1994 to 1997 is when the indictment of Maxwell's is that we have on the books. That's where it's from those years, and that puts Rogers directly as the pilot when this was occurring. So, is Rogers snitching on Ghislaine? Because remember what we talked about when you have a criminal organization, the lower rung participants usually snitch up. So we could have the case where we have several other indictments we don't know about yet, sealed indictments, and they're from people who have been ratting on Ghislaine this whole time. Rogers testified in a 2006 deposition that people get on the airplane, and I see who the people are, and I put them down there, he said of the log. While Rogers said he tried to be as accurate as possible, some passengers got more attention than others. There are repeated instances when Rogers noted the traveler not by name, but by gender, even on international flights. Can you imagine the leeway these people have, these rich people on these private jets, while you and I are canned in like sardines, catching COVID-19, catching every kind of SARS you can imagine, and smelling the disgusting hygiene of people all over around us? Meanwhile, these people are trafficking human beings, not filling out logs correctly, and living the high life, all the while laughing at us. Well, not for much longer. This raises the question of whether he complied with immigration and homeland security requirements. Now remember, the author of this article is an aviation journalist. This is what she does. She would know about immigration and homeland security requirements as far as pilots go. So for her bringing that up, it's probably a good avenue to take a walk down and see where you end up. Rogers and Visosky were well acquainted with Epstein's sex slaves and young companions. Both men had apartments in the same New York building at 301 East 66th Street as Epstein's unindicted co-conspirator, Global Girl, celebrity pilot Nadia Marchenko, who was herself reportedly an early victim of Epstein. Yeah, I'm starting to lose any sort of empathy I have for Nadia at this point, folks. She hasn't come forward. She hasn't done anything to help make this justice move in the proper direction. And if that's the case, and she's going to continue to throw her lot in with Epstein and the remnants of this criminal enterprise, then whatever's coming down the pipe for her, she's going to have to just take it. Rogers testified that the girls flying with Epstein into New York often stayed in other apartments in the same building, all of which were owned by Epstein. If she's on the plane with us on multiple trips, then most likely she's probably stayed there, Rogers said of the girl travelers. Business Insider has an interesting investigation into the building on 66th Street, which you can read here. We have covered that article as well, and the building on 66th Street. So these pilots, they got a lot to answer for, folks. A whole lot to answer for. Not only were they on the planes, they were in the same buildings. You weren't in the elevators going down to get groceries or to check your mail or any of that jazz, huh? Okay. Pedophilia and human trafficking are serious crimes, but Epstein did not commit them without help, nor is that the likely limit of his activities. As various news accounts show, over the course of decades, Epstein orchestrated an international network of wealthy, powerful, and influential people who my Uncle Maurice would call no-goodniks. I like that. That's pretty good, no-goodniks. Uncle Maurice seems to know what he's talking about. My uncle, Angelo, would call them stunads. Just because Epstein is dead, other scoundrels should not be able to get away with their crimes, including the pilots who appear to have enabled a lot of bad behavior without encountering a single unpleasant consequence. No investigation into Jeffrey Epstein should be considered complete without getting the full story from the pilots. And maybe the FAA should consider if Rogers and Visosky met the good moral standing expectation attached to their pilot's license. I'll tell you what, Miss Christine Negrani hits the ball out of the park with this one as well. And look, at the end of the day, when you're talking about these pilots, there is zero chance anyone can convince me that they don't know what occurred, that they didn't see these people coming and going. Let's get some pictures of the people that were supposedly on these planes, if they don't have their logs correct or whatever it may be. And let's do it that way. Well, there has to be a mechanism, right, to sit all of these pilots down and get the information from them. Again, if they don't want to do it willingly, then they have to be compelled to do so. It's the only way to get to the bottom of all of this. And really, like I've said from the beginning here, that is what I want, a real investigation for the first time into Jeffrey Epstein and all of the other people who helped enable this trafficking ring. And for decades, it eluded the survivors. A real trial, a chance for them to tell their story, a chance for them to stand in front of those who abused them. But finally, the wheels of justice are turning. And when the wheels of justice start turning, people like Ghislaine Maxwell and these pilots, they end up in the crosshairs. They end up being ground in to the asphalt. And all of these people who were involved, all of these people who are criminally liable still to this day for what occurred, all of these people are in great jeopardy of criminal indictments at this point. And we see it now. I think one of the big tells is somebody like Adam Perry Lang coming forward and cooperating. He sees the writing on the wall. He understands that if he doesn't come forward, he was going to be compelled to do so probably. And the rest of these people, especially these pilots, can expect the same in the future. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. All right, everybody, it's the weekend. You know the deal. I hope everybody's going out tonight and having a great time, but please do not drink and drive. As for me, I'll be back tomorrow morning and we'll start all over again.
From the east side and downtown to the west side and the valley, Los Angeles restaurants are open for contactless delivery or pickup with DoorDash. If you're looking for brunch, happy hour, or just an afternoon snack, DoorDash has your favorite local picks all in one app, so you can follow city guidelines without missing out on everything your neighborhood has to offer. Download the DoorDash app and get your local neighborhood delivered right to your door. DoorDash, every flavor welcome. From the east side and downtown to the west side and the valley, Los Angeles restaurants are open for contactless delivery or pickup with DoorDash. If you're looking for brunch, happy hour, or just an afternoon snack, DoorDash has your favorite local picks all in one app, so you can follow city guidelines without missing out on everything your neighborhood has to offer. Download the DoorDash app and get your local neighborhood delivered right to your door. DoorDash, every flavor welcome.